Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going small.
Small homes.
Small homes.
Well,
Tiny homes, micro apartments, you name it. We're diving deep into this world. So I've got this article here called Small Home Design, Maximizing Space, Efficiency, and Style. And it's got some good stuff. I'm so excited to break it down.
yeah, these tiny homes seem to be popping up everywhere. Like, what's the deal? Is it just a trend, or are they really like a good way to live?
Yeah, that's the big question, right? Are they just a fad? Well, this article kind of unpacks it all. We're going to be looking at the pros and cons, all the costs, design principles, even get into some of these popular options like tiny houses and micro apartments.
Sounds like a plan.
So one thing that really caught my eye right off the bat was this fact about tiny homes. They can cost anywhere from like $20,000 all the way up to $150,000.
Wow, really?
That
That's
is-
quite a range. That's crazy.
That is a pretty big range. I was surprised by that.
Right.
So clearly there are like a lot of different factors that come into play, right?
Mm.
So let's start with the good stuff. Like, what are the biggest advantages of living in a small home?
Well, the article highlights affordability,
Yeah.
right? And that's a big one, especially with housing costs going up everywhere. You're using fewer materials, less labor, so that means lower construction costs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And don't forget about the utilities. You're heating and cooling a much smaller space, so those monthly bills should be significantly lower.
Oh, yeah, lower bills. I'm always down for that. But I was also thinking about the environmental impact. Like, aren't smaller homes better for the planet?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Smaller carbon footprint. I mean,
Yeah.
think about it. You're using fewer resources to build it. You're generating less waste. Plus, it's easier to make it eco-friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Solar panels, better insulation, things like that. Some of them are even designed to be totally off the grid.
That's really cool. I've been trying to be more mindful of my own footprint. So this whole idea of like a home designed for sustainability is really appealing to me. I know for me, just decluttering my own house, like getting rid of stuff I don't need, is a huge step towards living more sustainably. Have you noticed that people who live in small spaces tend to have that minimalist mindset?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Minimalism's all about intentionally living with less,
Yeah.
focusing on what truly matters. And yeah, I think smaller spaces often go hand in hand with that. Like, it kind of forces you to be more selective about what you own and to prioritize experiences over stuff.
That's a good point.
And speaking of prioritizing, let's not forget about the flexibility some of these homes offer.
You mean like those tiny homes on wheels?
Exactly. Think about it.
Yeah.
You can pick up and move your entire house whenever you want.
That's pretty wild. I have to admit, though, like, the thought of fitting my whole life into a tiny house on wheels makes me wonder about the compromises involved. Like, what about storage?
Oh, yeah, storage can be a challenge.
And having friends over. Could you see yourself living in such a compact space?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
Space is definitely something to think about. And yeah, the article acknowledges storage can be tough. You got to be strategic, really think about what you keep and how you organize it. And yeah, big gatherings might be tricky. You might have to get creative, maybe use outdoor space more or find other places to meet up. But I've seen some super clever designs that actually address those concerns.
Like what?
Well, they use vertical space really well, like hidden storage built into the walls, even under the floors. And multifunctional furniture is huge. Beds that turn into couches, tables that fold away. It's really inspiring to see how much they can fit into these small spaces.
Staircase drawers, hidden compartments. Wow. Sounds like you have to think outside the box when you're designing these small homes.
Yeah, you do.
But what about privacy? I mean, I imagine sharing such close quarters, especially with family, could be a little intense.
Privacy is a good point. And noise can be a factor too. Open floor plans are great for space, but not so great for sound insulation. I think you have to be realistic about what you need and if this kind of lifestyle is really a good fit for you.
So you think some people romanticize the idea of tiny homes without thinking about the downsides?
It's easy to get caught up in the charm and the whole idea of simplified living, but yeah, it's important to do your research. Be honest with yourself about what you're willing to sacrifice.
Right.
The article also mentions zoning and legal issues, which can be a big roadblock, especially for those unconventional homes like tiny houses. Building codes can be stricter. Permits can be a nightmare.
So it's not as simple as buying a tiny house and hitting the road.
No, not really. There's a lot more to it than that.
And speaking of practicalities, we talked about the price range for tiny homes,
Yeah.
but what other expenses should people be prepared for?
Right, well, construction is just one part. Land costs are a big one, and they vary a lot depending on where you want to live. And you might have zoning fees too.
Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that.
And if you're going off-grid, Those alternative systems can get pricey up front. Composting toilets, solar panels, stuff like that. So it's really about weighing the short-term costs versus the long-term savings.
Right, it's all a balancing act. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the fun part. Design. I'm always blown away by how designers manage to make these tiny spaces so stylish and functional.
It's pretty remarkable, isn't it?
Yeah.
Open floor plans are key for making the most of the space. And like you mentioned earlier, those built-in storage solutions are everywhere. Underfloor compartments, wall units that turn into desks. Every inch is used so thoughtfully.
It's like a giant puzzle figuring out how to fit everything in. What other design principles are important for small homes?
Vertical space is huge. You'll see a lot of lofts for sleeping to open up the floor below, and tall shelving units are a must. And don't underestimate light and color. Natural light is key, and light colors make a room feel so much bigger and more airy.
So even the smallest home can feel spacious and welcoming with the right design choices.
Exactly. It's all about being strategic and intentional with your design.
Makes sense.
And choosing the right furniture is crucial too. You need pieces that fit the scale of the space.
Yeah.
Think about multi-purpose furniture, modular pieces that can be rearranged.
It's like a whole new way of thinking about furniture. I'm starting to realize that small home design is about so much more than just downsizing. It's like embracing a different way of life.
You got it. It's about challenging those conventional ideas of what a home should be and finding creative solutions. But it's also about prioritizing what truly matters and letting go of the excess.
Right. Sizing your life.
Exactly.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick pause and come back with more on small home design in just a moment. Stay tuned. And we're back, talking all things small homes. Still loving this deep dive.
Me too. It's amazing how much there is to learn. We've covered a lot of ground.
Mhm.
Affordability, sustainability, the challenges of space.
Yeah, but we can't forget about the fun part, right?
Hmm.
Design. I'm really curious to hear more about how different design styles work in these small spaces.
Yeah, the article talks about that too. It's fascinating how you can adapt different styles, like minimalism, which we touched on earlier. It's a natural fit, right? Clean lines, neutral colors, no clutter.
I love that aesthetic. It feels so calm and spacious.
Exactly. And speaking of spacious, Scandinavian design is great for that too. It's all about creating a cozy and inviting atmosphere, even in a small space. Think natural materials like wood and wool, soft textures, and a light color palette, and lots of natural light, which is key for making any room feel bigger.
Scandinavian design is so beautiful. I love those light wood floors and white walls with just pops of color here and there. But what about someone who wants a more modern look? Does that work in a small space?
Oh, absolutely. Modern and contemporary styles were all about clean lines, geometric shapes, and a minimalist vibe. You might see sleek furniture with metal accents, bold pops of color, abstract art, and they often incorporate technology really well. Smart home features, things like that.
So it's like style and practicality all in one. Now, I have to ask about rustic design. I'm a sucker for that cozy cabin in the woods feel. Can you get that in a small home?
Oh, for sure. Rustic and cottage styles can be so charming in a small space. Exposed beams, reclaimed wood furniture, cozy textiles, vintage accents. It's all about warmth and character.
Okay, I'm sold. What other styles are out there? I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Oh, there's so many. For a sense of peace and balance, there's Japanese-inspired design. It emphasizes harmony and natural elements. You'll see a lot of sliding doors, screens, natural materials like bamboo, and then there's industrial style. Think raw materials like concrete and brick, exposed ductwork, metal shelving.
It's amazing how many options there are. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the different types of small homes. We mentioned tiny houses, micro apartments, container homes, and prefab homes. Let's unpack those a bit more, shall we?
Let's do it. Tiny houses are definitely having a moment right now.
Mm.
They're usually under 400 square feet, often built on trailers so you can move them around. It's like living in a tiny house on wheels.
I've seen so many incredible designs online. Those tiny homes are so charming. Do you think they're more than just a trend?
I think it's a movement. People are looking for alternatives to traditional housing, and tiny homes offer that freedom, simplicity, and affordability that a lot of people are craving. And these tiny house communities are really interesting. It's like a modern take on village living, where people are sharing resources and building community.
It's such a cool concept. What about micro apartments? Those seem like they'd be popular in big cities where space is at a premium.
Exactly. Micro apartments are basically super compact apartments, often under 400 square feet as well. They're designed to use every inch of space efficiently. Lots of multifunctional furniture and built-in storage.
It sounds like a great way to live in the heart of a city without spending a fortune. Okay, switching gears again, what about those container homes?
Container homes are awesome. They're made from those repurposed shipping containers, which is super sustainable. You can stack them, combine them to make bigger spaces. The design possibilities are really endless.
It's so creative. I love the industrial aesthetic too. And lastly, what about those prefab or modular homes? Are those becoming more popular?
Definitely. They're built off-site in sections, then assembled on location. So the construction process is much faster. And they come in such a variety of styles now. You can find really beautiful and innovative prefab homes that are just as nice as traditionally built homes.
So, with all these options, who exactly is small home living for? It seems like it's becoming more mainstream.
That's a great question. It's not just for a niche group anymore. It's attracting a diverse range of people who are looking for something different from the traditional housing model.
We're back for the final part of our small home journey. I feel like we've covered so much ground already. The benefits, the challenges, all those cool design styles.
We have. But I keep thinking, who's this all for? Who is small home living really for? Is it for everyone or just a certain type of person?
It's a big question, right? We talked about the pros and cons, all the different styles, but who is actually drawn to this kind of lifestyle? Our article, Small Home Design, Maximizing Space, Efficiency, and Style, has a whole section on this.
Yeah, it does. And it mentions several groups that are especially into small homes. Like we said, affordability is a big draw, especially for young professionals just starting out.
Right, a small home can be much easier to afford than a traditional house, especially in those expensive cities.
Exactly. And it's not just the buying price either. Smaller homes usually mean lower property taxes, lower utility bills, so that frees up more money for other things.
Yeah, travel, experiences, whatever you're into.
Right. And for those young professionals who like to move around, small homes, especially those on wheels, give you that freedom.
It's like having your home and your adventure all in one. What about people who are further along in their careers? Or maybe heading into retirement? Are small homes good for them too?
Definitely. Empty nesters and retirees are another big group that's interested in small homes.
Mm,
They might not need that big family home anymore, and downsizing can give them more time and energy for other things.
that makes sense. Traveling, hobbies, spending time with family.
Exactly. And let's not forget about minimalists. We talked about how what that lifestyle fits with smaller spaces.
Right, it goes hand in hand.
A smaller home kind of forces you to be more intentional about your belongings and to just live more simply.
It's about having less stuff and more experiences. I bet environmentalists are on board with that too.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Small homes just naturally have a smaller impact on the environment. You use less to build them, you create less waste. Plus, it's easier to incorporate eco-friendly features.
Like solar panels and things like that.
Exactly. So it's a win-win.
Hmm.
Good for the planet, good for the homeowner. And what about people who travel a lot? Small homes seem perfect for them too.
Oh, yeah, good point. You can just lock up and go without having to worry about a big property.
Right. Less maintenance, less to worry about.
And more money for travel because you're saving on those housing costs. What about people who are trying to buy their first home? Do you think small homes are a good option for them?
I think so. Especially with the housing market being so crazy right now, a small home could be a much more attainable way to get into home ownership.
It's a way to start building equity without having to take on a huge mortgage.
Right. It's like a stepping stone to a larger home later on.
So it's not just for a small group of people then. It really appeals to a whole range of people in different situations.
Definitely. And let's not forget about all the creative people out there.
Hmm?
People who love the challenge and the possibilities of designing a small space.
Yeah, it's like a blank canvas for them to express themselves.
Oh.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the main thing you want people to take away from this?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that small home living is a choice. It's about choosing a different way of life, one that prioritizes simplicity, efficiency, being intentional with your space and your belongings. It might not be for everyone, but it's a really interesting movement that's changing how we think about homes.
I love that. It's about finding freedom and happiness within a smaller footprint. So if you're curious about small homes, keep exploring. You might be surprised by what you find. And who knows, maybe it'll spark some ideas for your own home. Even if you're not planning to downsize, maybe you can find ways to live more simply and intentionally. Thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with more fascinating topics to explore.